So I wanted to demonstrate how to implement light and dark theme mode in a React Native app and came up with this newsfeed app UI. It looks pretty good, so let's look at how to build it in this video and work on the dark and light mode implementation in the next video. At the end of the tutorial, the full source code will be available to my patrons and the link to that will be in the description below. So to start our work, we'll create a fresh React Native app, and over here I'll use Expo to create one. So we can use nps create Expo app and call our app newsfeed. We run this command and it will go through the process and generate the app for us. Once it's done generating, we can open the project in the code editor and run it on an emulator. We have a tutorial about the setup process on the channel, so you can check it out if you need it. So with the project open like so, we can start our work. So to kickstart the work, I'll share some starter files with you. This will be a folder containing assets and config folders. In the assets, I have a few images in there. These are the images that we are going to use in the app. I don't own any of these images. I downloaded them from this site. That is Wallpaperscraft. In the other directory, which is the config directory, you have a data file and a theme file. So all you have to do is that go into the starter folder and copy the config folder into the project. You choose copy folder. And for the assets, open it and copy the images directory into your assets directory. Yeah, just like so. And you should have all the images you need here. The theme file here contains the colors that we want to start our project with. So it's an object that will be importing our colors from. And the data here contains array of objects that we'll be using to render the information on our pages. So with that done, we start our work in the app.js file. Over here, we'll start working on our home screen. This is the home screen. And for all the screens, we'll put them in a directory. So let's create a directory for our screens. And the first file we'll create here is the home. Over here, I'll just copy the contents of the app file and paste it here. With that done, I'll change the app here to home. And in the app file, we can import the home and display it for the time being. So we get rid of everything here and put the home there. Then we can get rid of the styles here. And also the import here can go away. Back in the home file, we can replace the text here to say home page. Yeah, just like so. Now to start the home, we'll create a container component to wrap all our content. So for that, we'll keep it in the components directory. So we create a directory for components. And then in this directory, we'll create one for containers. The file for our container will be called main container. Over here, let's create a function for the container. And then we make sure that we export it as the default. For this, we'll be styling it a bit, so let's copy the styles from the home file. Then we can put it just before the import. And then before the container too, we need to import the StyleSheet. So for that, we can copy that from the home as well. Now for the container, the first thing we want to return is the SafeAreaView. So we import that from React Native. We will not use the text and view here, so we can get rid of them and replace it with the SafeAreaView. This component will ensure that when a device has a notch, it will not affect the content of your app. So that will be returned as the first component. So I can copy it and use it here. we'll assign the container style to it. So we assign styles.container. And over here, we'll keep only the flex property. The next component we'll use here is the scroll view, so that if the content goes beyond the screen, we can scroll and see it. So for that one as well, we can get it from React Native. And then we'll put that in the SafeAreaView. This component will receive some styles as well. Now one thing we'll be doing in this project is that because our project is geared towards changing the theme of the app from light to dark, it will only be possible if we apply our colors inline, so that I'll be able to toggle them later on instead of putting them in the style sheet here. So for the scroll view here, we'll first give it a background color, but let's import the color that we'll use from our colors. So first of all, we bring in the colors file. That is in our config directory, so we go back 2 steps. Then we can access config and then the theme file, which contains our colors. Over here in the component, we'll call the colors that we are currently using active colors. This is because the colors will be changing later on. And then for now, we'll assign it to the colors. Yeah, just like so. So over here, we first assign a background color. And we'll set it to the primary color from our colors. Now aside the colors, we don't want any scroll indicator to show while using the scroll view. So we set the property shows vertical scroll indicator to false. And for the properties that this container will receive, the first one will be the children. And we'll set that as the main content of the container. In addition to that, we can receive some extra styling. And then for that, we add it to our style here. So we change this to an array. And as the second value of the array, we pass the style. And for any other property that is remaining, we'll capture it into the props. And then we can spread that onto the scroll view as well. Now the last thing we want to do here is that we want to style our status bar in this container file. So we bring the status bar from the home component. So we copy the import here. And then we paste it here. And then back in the home component, we copy the usage. And then over here, we just paste it below the children. For the style, we'll leave it on auto for now. Now we go back to the home component and import the main container. We can put a comment here to keep them clean. Now the container will be the first thing we export over here. So we get rid of everything and put the main container. Now if we look at our UI, the first thing we have is the big text here. For the home, it will come when we add the navigation. So we have to create a component to display this text. So in the components directory, we'll create another directory for text. And then we'll call our file style text. For this, you can copy the contents of the main container. And then we paste it here. The name here will be style text. So we can hit Ctrl D to edit them both at the same time. Yeah, just like so. For this, the only component we need from React Native is text. And then replace the scroll view here with text. And then we can get rid of the SafeAreaView. Also, we don't need the styles here. Also, the text doesn't need this property. And then we can get rid of the status bar here and also the import. Now for the style, we'll change the background color here to color. And then we'll set it to the tint of our colors. Also, we want to set a font size. Now for this, we want to set some initial values for the sizes of text that we will need. So we want to have 3 of them, a small, a regular, and a big text. So for that, we expect to receive a small property, referring to the small text, and also a big property, referring to the big text. If we don't receive any of these, then we assume that we want a regular text, so that one will set the size here. So for the size, we check if we receive the small property. We want to set the size to 14. Otherwise, if we receive the big property, we want to set the size to 24. If we don't receive any of these, we want to set the size to 16. So that will be our regular text. Also for the font weight of the text, if we receive a bold property, we want to set the value to bold. So that will be received as a property here. And then over here, we'll make the check. Also, if our text is big, we want to make it bold by default. So we check for that one as well. So if that is the case, we set the value to bold. Otherwise, we set the value to normal. With that done, we can save this. And then back in the home file, we import the style text. In the main container, we'll put the text. And then the content will be trending news. Just like so. Also, we'll give this some extra styles. And we'll call this section title. So we can replace the container here with section title. And for the styles, we can give it a margin at the top of 25. And also a margin at the left of 25. In addition to that, let's pass the big property so that our text can be big. Yeah, just like so. Now the next item on our page is the list of cards that we have over here. We'll call this news section. So we'll create some components for that as well. So first, in the components directory, let's create another directory called news. And then we'll create a file for the news section. So for this, we can copy the content of the container and paste it here. We change the name to news section and we hit Ctrl D to select them both at the same time. Now over here, we won't use any of these, but I'll use the FlatList. So we can get rid of all the content here and put the FlatList. Also, we won't need the styles here as well. And then we don't need the status bar. And also the colors. Now the new section component will receive a data property. And this data will be displayed by the FlatList. So we pass the data to the FlatList. Now back in the home component, you can import the new section here. And then below the style text, we can put the new section. Now the data property that will be passing will be the data that we have in our config directory. So first we'll be using this news data array. So back in the home here, we can import that. And then we pass it through the data property. Now for each item in the data array, we need to render something for it. So just like in our UI, we need to render a card like this for each item in the array. So for that, we'll create a component for the card and we'll call it news item. So still under news, under the components directory, we'll create a news item. And for this, we'll copy our container content once again. So from the main container, we copy everything and paste it in the news item. And then we change the name from main container to news item. For now, let's just get rid of everything in it and put a text component with the value of yay. And we'll get this text component from React Native. And then back in our new section file, we import the news item. Oh, we are getting an error here that it can't find the style sheet. That's because in the news item, we got rid of the style sheet here. So let's add it. Yeah, we'll be working with it later. Now over here, through the render item property, we want to pass the news item. And this will take a function. And the return value will be the news item. For the parameters of the function, we'll extract the item from it. And we'll spread the item onto the news item component. So that for each item that we receive from the data, the news item to have access to it. Now it's a good practice to assign keys whenever you display a list of items. So we'll pass the key extractor here. This key extractor will have access to the content of our data. So once again, this will be a function. And as the argument, it will receive the item, so we can destructure the ID from it. Remember, when you have a look at the data here, each item in the data has an ID property. So over here, for the key of each item, we can convert the ID to a string. And this will be assigned as the key to each item. Now, as you can see from the display text here, our list is in a vertical order, but we want it to be a horizontal list. So we pass the horizontal property and set the value to true. Also, we don't want any scroll indicator to be shown, so we pass the shows horizontal scroll property. And then we set the value to false. Now for the way the content will be displayed, we want to style it a bit. So we pass a content container style property. And for this, we add a padding to the left of 25. And then a padding to the top of 25 as well. You can just refresh the app here to clear the error. And as you can see, we have some space at the left here and it's in line with the text. Now we can move on to our news item component. Now for each news item on our page, we want it to be something that you can click on to lead you to the details page. So over here, the outermost component for the news item should be a touchable. So let's import the touchable opacity from React Native. And then we'll return that. Let's start the touchable opacity a bit. For the styles, it will be an array. And then we'll start with some colors here. So first we set the background color to the secondary color of our colors. And in addition to that, we'll assign some styles that we'll have in the style sheet here. So we'll call that container. And then in the container style, we don't need the flex here. Instead, we'll set a height of 370 and a width of, let's say, 300. Also, we'll give it a border radius of 25 and then a margin at the right of 20 so that we can have some space between each item. Now the first thing in our card here is an image that will fill the top part of the card. So for that we need the image component from React Native. So over here we replace the text here with the image. Now remember, as we said, we are passing each item in the data property here to the news item here. So this news item should have access to the content and all the properties of the data item. So over here at the top here we can structure some properties. If you look at the data, we have a path for our image. So we can start with that and bring in the image. We don't need the children property here, so we can replace that with the image. Also, we don't have a style and we can get rid of that for now. For the other props that we have here, we can pass it to the touchable opacity before we forget. Now what you're going to do is that over here we pass the image to the source property of our image component here. And as you can see, we see some signs already that we have some images. Now to make this look better, we pass some styles. And we'll call this image. So down here in the style sheet, we create a rule for image. For our image, we want it to be the same width as the container. So I can just copy that one and put it here. And for the height, we want to make it shorter than the container. So we can give it about 190 pixels. And then we can give it a border radius as well. And it should be the exact same as the container. So that will be 25. And as you can see, it looks better already. Now having a look at our UI, the next thing we have is a title. And this is a text component as well. So this is a fine opportunity to reuse the text component that we created for the heading over here. So over here, we import the style text. And then just beneath the image, we put the style text. For the value, we will get it from the data as well. And from the data, that's the title property. So we can destructure that. Then we pass it to the style text. Now this looks nowhere near what we have on our UI, so let's give it some styling. So once again, we'll pass the style property. And because we'll be passing some colors inline, we'll make it an array. And then for the first object, we'll set the color. For this, we'll set it to the accent color in our colors. So from the active colors, we'll get our accent color. And then for the remaining properties, we'll get it from our style sheet. And we'll call this title. Now we want our text to be bold, so we can pass the bold property here. Now down here in the style sheet, we'll create the row for the title. Now for the title, we want it to be a bit bigger than our regular text, but not as big as our big text here. So let's set a custom font size here. And we'll set the value to 19. Now for all the content that we have under our image here, we want to group them and style them. So we need to wrap them in a component. So at the top here, let's import view from React Native. And then starting with the text here, we put it in the view. And then we assign a style to the view. We'll call this bottom section. Then for the style, that would be just before the title. The first thing we'll do is to give it a padding of 25. So that we have some space around the content. We'll give it some more properties, but first let's add the other content. When we look at our UI, the next thing we have is an image, the name of the author, and when the article was posted. With all these items in line, we can group them as a row component. So now just below the style text, we can put another view for the row. And for the styles that it will receive, we'll call this author row. Just because it has some information about the author of the news item. Now back to the UI, we want to group the image here and the name as one sub-component. So once again, back in our view, we need another view. And then for the styling of this view, we'll call it author. Now in this view, we'll first need an image. And then once again, for the value, we'll get it from our data. So looking at our data, we have the avatar property, which refers to the image of the author. And also we have the name of the author as the author property. So we can destructure these two properties in our news item. So after the title, we bring in the avatar and then the author. So for the image, we pass it as a source. And that will be the avatar. This is bigger than we want, so it needs some styling. So we pass some style to it. And we'll call this style avatar. Right below it, we'll put the name of the author. And we'll do that using the style text. And for the value, we pass the author property. Let's handle some of the styling so that we can see the name of the author. So down here in the styles, first let's style the avatar. Let's give it a width of 30 pixels. And then height of 30 as well. Now let's give it a border radius. And for the value, we'll set it to half of the width, so 15. Now the author style is the container wrapping both the image and the author name, so let's style that too. And that can be put before the avatar here. We want the image and the name to be inline, so we can set the flex direction property. And we set this to be row. Now to have some space between the image and the name, let's give the image some margin at the right side. So we give it a margin right property and pass a value of 10. Now we see that there is space. Now to keep the image and the name aligned in the middle, let's use the align items property. So we pass that to the author. And we want to set the value to center. Let's also give it a margin at the right to ensure that it has some space. Now for the text at the right side here, we'll make use of the style text again. So let's go to the top and use the style text. That will be just below the view of the author. For this property, we get the value from the data as well. And for that, the key is the date property. So in the news item, we bring in the date. And then we can pass it to the style text. Now let's style this a bit. We want to assign a color here, so we need an array. And we open the object. And then for the color, we set the value to the tertiary color. This tertiary color is a bit lighter compared to our text here. Now in addition to the color styling, we'll pass some extra styles. For this, we'll call the property date. And before we start the date, let's pass the small property here to ensure that the text is smaller. Now over here, in the style sheet, we add the date key. And for this, we want to test align to the right. Now from our image, we want all these properties to be on the same line. So let's add some more styling. So let's look for the container which wraps all the content. And as you can see here, that is the author row. So down here, we need to add the author row property. So you can put that just before the author. For the first property, we'll set the flex direction to row. And then to keep all the content aligned in the middle, we'll set the align items property to center. And now to push each of the items here to the side of the component, we'll pass the justify content property. And we'll set the value to space between. This should push the items here to the side. Now to ensure that the two components here occupy consistent spaces on other devices, let's apply the flex property here. So for the author here, let's give it a flex of 3. And also for the date here, let's give it a flex of 2. Now we can see that the author row here is too close to the title that we have over here. So let's paste them up. So to do that, we go to the styling for the bottom section. Over here, in addition to the padding, we want to give it a flex of 1. And after that, we can set the justify content property. And the value will be space between. And this will space out the content for us. Now the card looks good. Now in the case of very long titles or very long names, the design of the card will be messed up. For example, let's say I go to the data property and I add some random text to the title. Let's say I even copy and paste it once more. And actually, let's do this for the first item. So I copy and paste the title here. And then I copy and paste the name as well. Let me paste it again so that it will be long enough. Now we see that the design of the card is totally messed up. So to fix that, we want to limit the number of lines that each component here will display. So let's go back to the news item. Now for the title here, we want to limit the number of lines. So we use the number of lines property. We can pass that just before the styles. And for this, let's set the value to 3. Once we do that, we see that the value has been shortened. Also for the name here, we want to make use of the same property. So we can copy this and look for the style text here and paste it. For this, we can limit the value to just 1, or even make it 2 since we have some space. Also, we want to make the text bold, so let's pass the bold property. And looks good. Now let's go back to the data and get rid of what we pasted. So I'll just undo, Ctrl Z, and we should be fine. Then we can go back to the news item property. Now the card looks like just what we have in our UI, and also we can scroll with no problems at all. Now we can save this file and go to the top and get rid of any import that we didn't use. You can get rid of the text here as well. Now let's go back to our UI and see what we need to do next. The next thing over here is another heading, which is very similar to the one we did for the trending news here. So we can go to our home component. And over here we copy and paste the style text here. And then we change the content to explore. Now beneath the explore here, we have a few more components that we have to display. So just like what we did for the trending news here, this is a different style compared to what we have here. So we need to create new components for that. And we'll call this whole section explore section. And each item in the explore section, explore item, just like what we did for this. So let's create the components. So under the components directory, we'll create a directory for explore. And in this, we'll create a file explore section. And we'll create another one for explore item. So to start, let's copy the content of the news section into the explore section. So we select everything, go to the explore section and paste that. And then we do the same for the news item. We select everything we have here, go to the explore item, and then paste it. Now before we proceed, let's go to the home component and import the explore section. So we import explore section. We are getting the error here because of the imports in the explore section and the explore item, but I'll fix that shortly. So beneath the explore text here, let's render the explore section. And for the data, let's use the same news data here for the time being. Now let's go to the explore section and fix the imports. Over here, we are not importing from news item anymore. We are importing from explore item. So I can use Ctrl D to select all of them and type explore item. And as you can see, we have a replica of our list here. Now let's change the name of the component from new section to explore section. And everything else will stay the same for the component. So we can close this up. And then we focus on the explore item. Now for the explore item, we'll get rid of the outer row here. But I'll keep the image here and the style text here. Also, we don't need the view wrapping it. Now for the touchable opacity here, we don't need to give it a background color, since our background will be filled by the image. That's what I'm talking about. When you look at the UI here, the whole component is covered by the image, so we don't need a background color for that. Now let's change the styles of the container here. First of all, we change the height to 120. And we'll do the same for the width. For the border radius, it will be a half of the width, so that will be 60. And the margin will stay the same. Now for the image, we want to set it to the same dimensions as our container, so we can copy the content here from the height to the border radius. And then replace the content of the image with it. Just like so. Now we don't need the bottom section property here. Also, we don't need the outer row, the outer, the avatar, and the date. So we can get rid of all of them. Now going back to the top, we can get rid of the number of lines here since we will not need it. And also reduce the style here to just the styles.title. Now before we proceed, let's update the data that we are using here. So let's go to the home component. And then over here, we import the explore data as well. If you look into the data file, the explore data is just beneath the news data. And that has an ID, the title, and an image. So over here, we pass the explore data to the explore section. And now we can see that the images have changed. So now we can go back to the explore item. Now over here, we can see that our title that we are displaying here is hidden. That is because it's being displayed just beneath the image here. But now we want the image to go behind the text. So to be able to do that, this image here should be able to fill the whole container. And in the style sheet, there is a property that can help us to do that. So for the styles of the image here, let's convert it into an array. Now just after the image here, we call StyleSheet and target the property absolute fill. Once we do that, we see that our text is being displayed here. That is because now our image is filling the background and now it is acting as just a container. Now all we have to do is to style the text that we have here. So let's go down to the style sheet to where we have the title. Now unlike what we've been doing for all this while, we'll set the color for the title here in the style sheet property. That is because when we look at the UI, regardless of the mode that we are in, the text in the explore section retains its color. So it doesn't matter whether it's dark or it's light, we retain the color. So we want to set the color in the style sheet instead. So over here we set the color to our colors.primary. and that's the white color. Now regarding displaying the text, we want our text to have a faint background which will cover the image here and to make it a bit darkened. So to be able to do that, we will give our title a height and a width as well, just like we did for the image. So for this, we'll set the height to 100%. And we'll set the width as well to 100%. Now to keep it centered, let's first apply the text align property. And we'll set the value to center. And then to center it vertically too, we'll pass the text align vertical. And the value will be center as well. Now we apply the faint background through the background color property. So first, we set the color to the hex value of black. And then after that, we'll give it some border radius. And this will be the same as our image, so that's 60. With that done, we reduce the opacity of the color by adding another digit. So we can add a digit like 3 to make it a bit more translucent, but I'll keep the value at 5. Which will make it a bit more darker and give us the look we are going for. The last thing we'll do for this title here is that we want to give it a border around the container. So we'll give it a border width. And we'll set the value to 2. And then we'll set the color of the border. And that will be the accent color. Once we have it that way, it should look like what we have in our UI. Yeah, just like so. Now by way of cleanup, let's go to the top of our component. We didn't use the active colors here, so we can get rid of it. Also, we didn't use the view here. Now since this is a touchable, when we press on it, we can put up an alert. So on press, we can pass a function and then alert the title. So when we press on tech, we should see tech, and the same for sports. Also, let's get rid of the properties here that we didn't use. We didn't use the avatar, the author, and the date. And that should do it for the explore item. With this done, we can move on to the details page. The details page will display the content from the card and add some extra text as a paragraph. To start the details page, let's go to our screens directory and create a file for details. To start this file, we'll copy the content of the home file and then paste it in it. Now back in our app.js, we import the details file. And then we can replace the home here with details. The output should stay the same though. Now back in the details, we'll start making our changes. With this done, we can get rid of the content of the main container. And now let's go to the news item component. Over here, we copy all the content in the touchable opacity. And then we paste it in the main container here. And we'll do same for the imports and the styles. So first of all, let's copy the imports. We already have StyleSheet here, so just add the image to it. And then we can get rid of this import. Also, we already have the style text, and we can get rid of this one. Now by the colors, we only need to go back a step, so we can get rid of this. Now before we look at this error, let's bring in the style sheet. So from the news item, we go to the styles and copy the whole style sheet. And then back on the details page, we can replace the style sheet with it. Just like so. Now we can see that the app is complaining about the image data here, and it will do the same for all the other properties that it is expecting to receive. So to fix that for the time being, let's get the data from one of the objects in the news data here. So we copy the news data here, and then we target the first index. So we paste it here and target the first index. And then we can target the image. Now it says you can't find the view, so we need to import the view from React Native. And then for the active colors, we can copy it from the news item. So just when we started the component, we have active colors. And then we can paste it here. So just like we've done for the image, we'll copy the news data here and do the same for the title. Also, we'll do the same for the avatar. And then for the altar. And then we'll do the same for the date here as well. Now as you can see, it's not complaining anymore. Now before we forget, let's change the name from home to details. And now we can start adjusting the styles. Starting with the main container here, let's go to the news item and copy the styles from the touchable opacity. Then back in the details page, we can assign it to it. Now let's go down to the style sheets and adjust the styles, starting with the image. So for the image, now we want the width to be 100% of the screen, so we set that to 100%. And then for the height, we'll increase it to 300 pixels. Now we have this space here because of the container, so let's get rid of it. And then at the top, we get rid of the container from the styles. And so this can cease to be an array. And that's how we want it to be. Now back down to the image. We don't need the border radius anymore, so we get rid of it. Now for the bottom section, the padding will stay the same, but we don't need the flex here, so we can get rid of it, and the justify content. Now if we take a look at the UI, on the details page, the bottom section goes up a bit onto the image, so let's look at how to implement that. So to do that, we start by giving it a top property, and we set the value to -30. And this will push it up a bit. Now to see it being pushed up, let's go to the top and assign a background color property. So we convert the style here to an array. And then we open an object here. So we set the background color property. And we'll set it to the secondary color. Now we see that the hidden portion is being displayed. Now let's go back to the bottom section style. Now we want to add a border radius to the top right section here. So to do that, we'll call border top right radius. And we'll set the value to 30. And we'll do the same for the left section. So border top left radius. And that will be 30 as well. Just like so. Now for the title here, we want it to be our biggest size. So we'll not set the font size anymore. But at the top, we'll set the big property. So we'll locate the title here and replace the bold here with big. And the size should increase for us. Now beneath the title, we want to have some space. So we'll go to the title style and add some margin at the bottom. We'll set this to 20. Now for the author row, everything will stay the same. For the author, everything will stay the same as well. But for the avatar, we'll increase the width and the height. So we'll change the width here to 50. And then we'll change the height to 50. And then we change the border radius to 25. For the margin at the right side too, we increase it to 25. Now beneath the name here, we'll have some text. So let's go to the top and use the style text component. So I can copy the style text here and paste it just below the view. For this, the value will be the content property. And we don't need a small property here. And also we don't need the color here to be set. And then finally we change the style here to content. So down here in our style sheet, we add the content key. For this, all we do is to add some margin at the top. And we can say 15 pixels. And it looks exactly like our UI. So we can save this, go to the top and remove anything we didn't use. So we didn't use the explore data here, and then the explore section and the new section. Also, we didn't use the status bar here. Remember that we are using the data here just as a placeholder. We'll set up the navigation and pass the data properly. With the details page done as well, we move to the next page. And that will be the settings page. The full source code up to this point will be available to my patrons who support me throughout the month. The link to have access to this will be in the description. Thanks for watching. Next, you can check out any of the videos on your screen now for more to the point code.